In the 1300s, something moved across the world faster than most people could understand. It traveled with ships, carts, fleas, rats, trade, war, fear, and silence. Later, people called it the Black Death. But to the people living through it, it did not feel like a chapter in a history book. It felt like the world had broken. Before the plague arrived in Europe, life was already fragile. Most people lived in villages. Food depended on harvests. Medicine mixed observation, religion, tradition, and guesswork. Cities were crowded. Animals lived close to humans, and waste often stayed near the streets. People did not know about bacteria. They did not know a tiny organism could reshape empires. The disease probably began moving through Central Asia before it reached the Black Sea. Trade routes connected distant places like threads. Goods moved. People moved. Armies moved. And so did infection. When plague reached port cities, ships became engines of disaster. A harbor could look normal in the morning, then become a warning by night. One of the most terrifying symptoms was the swelling. Painful lumps, called buboes, appeared near the neck, armpits, or groin. Fever followed. Weakness followed. Sometimes dark patches appeared under the skin. Some people died within days. Families had almost no time to understand what was happening before the disease was already inside the house. Medieval doctors tried to explain it with the tools they had. Some blamed bad air. Some blamed the planets. Some blamed corruption in the body. The famous beaked plague doctor outfit came later, but the fear was real from the beginning. People burned herbs, carried charms, prayed, fled, or locked themselves away. Some choices helped by accident. Many did not. The most dangerous part was that plague did not need one path. It could spread through fleas from infected rodents. It could spread in crowded places. In some forms, it could move from person to person through the air. That made it feel almost supernatural. You could avoid one danger and still be standing next to another. Cities suffered brutally. In some places, carts collected bodies because burial could not keep up. Church bells rang so often that some towns stopped ringing them. The normal rhythm of life collapsed. Markets emptied. Workshops closed. Priests, nurses, gravediggers, and family members faced the highest risk because they stayed near the sick. But the plague did not hit everyone equally. The poor often lived in tighter spaces and had fewer ways to escape. Laborers, servants, and people who handled goods were exposed constantly. Wealthy families could sometimes flee to estates, but distance was not a guarantee. The disease crossed walls, borders, and social rank. The death toll is difficult to count, but the scale was enormous. In Europe, the Black Death may have killed around 1/3 to 1/2 of the population. Imagine a village where every family loses someone. Imagine a city where every street has empty houses. It was not just a medical disaster. It was a social earthquake. And then something strange happened. When so many workers died, the survivors became more valuable. Land still needed farming. Animals still needed tending. Buildings still needed repair. Lord wanted labor, but there were fewer people to do the work. In some places, workers demanded better pay or moved to better opportunities. Rulers tried to stop that change. Laws attempted to freeze wages and force people back into old roles. But after the plague, the old world was harder to hold together. The shortage of labor weakened parts of the feudal system. It did not create modern freedom overnight, but it cracked assumptions that had seemed permanent. The plague also changed how people saw death. Art became darker. Religious life became more urgent. Some people turned toward compassion and service. Others looked for someone to blame. Across Europe, Jewish communities and other minorities were falsely accused and attacked. Fear did not only create mourning, it also created cruelty. Yet the Black Death was not the end of civilization. People rebuilt. Trade returned. Children were born into empty spaces. Cities changed rules. Families inherited land. Knowledge moved in new directions. The disaster did not make history stop. It pushed history into a different shape. That is why the Black Death still matters. It shows how invisible forces can expose every weakness in a society: crowded cities, bad information, inequality, panic, and fragile systems. But it also shows how survival changes power. After the plague, ordinary labor mattered in a way rulers could no longer ignore. The Black Death was not just a story about disease. It was a story about connection. The same routes that carried silk, spices, and money also carried danger. The same cities that made people richer also made them vulnerable. The world was already connected before people understood the cost of connection. So when we ask why the Black Death changed everything, the answer is not only that millions died. The answer is that the survivors inherited a different world. A world with fewer people, higher wages, deeper fear, sharper questions, and a memory that never fully disappeared.